Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Silence podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about understanding grief, understanding depression. For years, I suffered in silence with depression. As a peer support specialist, I realized that you can be in recovery from depression. Not all addictions like substance abuse or alcohol abuse, they are addictions, but sometimes we be in recovery from mental health crisis. Was in a season where I just was depressed. I couldn't understand why. I couldn't pinpoint why I was feeling so depressed. What I realized was when seasons changed or when seasons shifted, my mood would change. I believe the tools that God gave me will help you in this episode unpack seasonal depressions, why it happens the way that it happens, and how do you recover from being in depression. Truth is, it is not the will of God for you to stay stuck in depression year after year. Oftentimes, we go through cycles of depressions, we go through mood swings, and we can't really understand why we keep repeating the same cycles year after year. I didn't realize it was something called seasonal affective disorder. Now, I would have these high highs and low lows and moments in different parts of the seasons, and I just couldn't understand why. There was a season around this time, October of 2022. I told my husband, I said, look, I'm not feeling well. I think I may need to go talk to a doctor about getting on depression medicine. I literally thought something was wrong with my mind. But then I ended up going to a camp with women full of healing and just praying. This lady came to me and she said, there's nothing wrong with your mind. You've been delivered, you've been healed, you've been set free, but deliverance, you have to fight for it. Now that what she spoke over me, it stuck with me for several years until I just came to understand what did she really mean that deliverance, you have to fight for it. Now, I have been healed, I have been delivered and set free from depression, but I didn't have the tools or the coping mechanisms to stay out of depression. Here's what I want to unpack with you today on Breaking the Silence podcast. Again, it is not the will of God for you to stay stuck in depression. You had to heal the unspoken pain that you hold inside. Heal what you don't address and understand your emotional triggers. Understand your emotional triggers from depression. These are some tools that help me overcome depression. First, I had to allow God to heal me from the depression. And then I had to identify my emotional triggers, what was triggering me to fall back into depression. Now, I know I have been healed and delivered, but somehow I had these triggers that wouldn't stop triggering me, lack of better terms. There was not, they were, but as I began to identify my mood, when my moods shifted, I began to ask myself questions. The questions I asked myself was, what was I doing before I started feeling the mood shift? Who was I talking to? And how did I feel before I started talking to them? For instance, I could be on social media scrolling. My mood will automatically shift sometimes when I get off, or it may happen the next day. And I didn't understand why I kept falling in these cycles. It was sometimes I was following people that I didn't need to follow. Now I'm a feeler. So I can be on social media and I can be scrolling, but I can also feel the people emotions. That may be you. I didn't understand why I felt people emotions by just scrolling. And they could be not even talking about they are depressed, but somehow I still felt their emotions and the pain when I got off. That was a trigger for me. So I learned to identify which platforms that I can be on and which ones I cannot be on. I cannot entertain them. Sometimes you could be watching a movie, your mood will change. We have to learn to identify and stop allowing things in our eye gate and our ear gate that affects our moods because these spirits they travel whether you believe it or not. You could be speaking to someone that's down and depressed, or they're calling you with all of their anger, their frustration, their problems, right? And when you get off the phone with them, your mood change. Do you hear it? Do you see it? That was me. So I had to start recognizing, why is my mood changing? Who was I talking to, or what was I doing? And I realized that those were some triggers that I triggered by. I had to ask myself, is this a phone call that I want to pick up now? Do I have the capacity to take in these people's feelings at this moment? Is this important enough for me to answer this phone call now? Because I had to protect my peace. I had to protect my mental health. And I want you to start doing the same. Seasonal affective disorder, where I talked about certain seasons my mood would change. And it was around this time, the winter months, when winter was approaching, my mood would change. I realized that this is really a thing that's not talked about. So I began to Google and do research on seasonal affective disorder. Now, the definition of that is, it's a type of depression that occurs regularly during certain seasons of the year, typically in the fall and winter months when daylight hours are shorter. The exact cause of seasonal affective disorder is believed to be related to changes in the body's production of serotonin and melatonin hormones that regulate sleep and mood. Factors such as reduced daylight hours, lack of sunlight exposure. Also, the winter months you are in more, you have time enough to process everything that has happened the year and within the year. You have time to actually sit with yourself and your feelings. You are not really going out as much. So I believe it's the time to actually feel what you have been avoiding. The winter months allows you to sit in your feelings and feel what you have been avoiding. For years, I just couldn't understand, why was my mood down in the winter months. What I discovered was, sometimes we have these deficiencies in our bodies that will affect our mood. This was my story. This is how I identified my mood change. My energy level was down, so I began to talk to my doctor about checking my iron levels, which I came to find out that my iron levels was low. So I needed to take an iron supplement in order to increase my mood. I did it for a couple of months and it worked. My vitamin D was low. Sometimes when your vitamin D is low, that affects your mood. This is the things that I discovered coming out of depression. And I realized, hey, God, like, I've been in this quite a while now, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on with my mood. My kids would watch me have these crying spells or not wanting to get out of bed and just want to really hibernate in the wintertime. I didn't like winter. I still like to be inside in the winter. But now I have these coping mechanisms to help me so that I won't fall back into depression. Another strategy that God taught me was to pray against depression. When you know your mood is typically going to change at certain seasons, you have to learn to start praying against depression early on. Pray against it early in the early months so that it won't hit you or it won't affect you so hard to make you more stuck in depression. As I stated before, the winter months allows us to really sit with our feelings. We have time to really unpack all of those feelings and emotions in the winter months. The truth is, we have to come to a place where you no longer hold in all the emotions that you have been carrying over the years. I had no choice but to let go and let God heal me from the pain, the hurt, the guilt, the shame, the rejection, the abandonment I have been holding on to all these years. Avoidance is a silent painkiller. And I realized that I no longer wanted to repeat the same cycle year after year. You have to really understand it's not the will of God for you to stay stuck in cycles, patterns, and depression, and anger, and guilt, and shame. It's not the will of God for you to stay that way. God wants you free. God wants you healed and delivered. God wants you to have peace in your mind, and rest in Him. That's what God wants for us. He wants us to be happy. He wants us to be joyous. He wants us to be free. Another thing that helped me overcome depression was back in 2023. I didn't know that I had been holding in so many feelings, so many emotions that was hidden. God had to uproot the rejection that I was feeling. He had to uproot and heal me from people pleasing, from self sabotaging behaviors. And in that season, I prayed and I asked God, okay, I no longer want to feel this way. How do I overcome what I'm experiencing or what I have been experiencing over the years? God spoke to me to get professional help. The end of 2023, that's when I came in recovery of depression. I prayed and God sent me a wonderful therapist. We have to come to realization that God has people here on earth that can help us unpack and process our emotions so that we can be healed. Resurfacing childhood wounds or trauma, it hurts, but healing from it gives you way more freedom than letting it be suppressed. My true freedom came from when I sought professional help. Now let's be honest. I know I went to church and I thought by me just going to church, showing up every Sunday, that I was going to be healed from depression. That wasn't my story. I sought help from the church. I thought, hey, if I go to church every Sunday, maybe I won't feel these emotions or pain that I feel deep inside that no one wants to talk about or no one wants to address. Maybe God would just come down and heal me from the depression or the rejection, the people pleasing, the abandonment that I had been silently holding on to. It wasn't until I allow God in that place. I told God how I was feeling, how all the pain that I had been feeling inside, I released it and I gave it to God, and God sent me help. That's my story. That's how I began my healing process from depression. Depression is real. You can stay in depression for so long that it becomes oppression. Dealing with the things that I had to go through in that season of letting go of what I thought my life should look like, letting go of people that I thought was going to ride with me and rock with me till the wheels fall off. God said, disconnect. In that season, God spoke a scripture to me. And the scripture was that He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. That was the season of pruning that I went through with God. It was hurtful, but it was necessary. Dealing with depression it's like an addiction. It's an addiction that no one wants to talk about. That's why in this podcast I want to talk about depression and understanding grief, because it is a connection between depression and grief. Unchecked grief can lead to depression and eventually be oppression, where you just can't see your way out of the dark tunnel that you are in. And I believe God has placed me on a mission to help people overcome depression and oppression. Battling with depression, it's a daily fight. I still have those thoughts in my mind that I just want to stay in the bed all day. I don't want to be bothered with people. Today is just not a good day for me. I still battle with those thoughts, but I have to continue to fight for my freedom. I thought back to how I see people that suffers from substance abuse and alcohol abuse. How do they consciously make the decision to stop abusing alcohol and drugs? And I thought and I said to God, like, well, God, it's really a daily fight for them too. They had to make up in their mind that they're no longer going to go that route, that they no longer want to be stuck in those cycles and holding patterns. They no longer want to be held down by the pain of suppressing their feelings and their emotions and turning to alcohol or drugs. That was never my story. Growing up, I saw my parents abuse alcohol. So in my mind back then, I said I would never abuse alcohol. I had no choice but to turn to God, who I know is a healer. God healed me from depression. Yes, every day is a daily fight. I had to make a decision every day that I would not go back into depression. I love the peace that I have. I have recognized my emotional triggers. I know that I have to stay making sure my iron levels are up to the level that they need to be. I have to make sure that I'm getting enough sunlight or I'm taking my vitamin supplements every day. I understand now when my mood change. Also, your emotional triggers may be your finances right now. Living in a society that we live in today, I know a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. That may be an emotional trigger for you. Let's be honest, I'm being transparent. That was an emotional trigger for me for a long time. I made my finances out of an idol that God wasn't pleased with me about making money an idol. I had to allow God in that space to heal me from, money making my mood high or low. I found freedom in that area because I allowed God to heal me from the poverty mindset. Now I know that when I have money or when I don't, or when my money is low, I'm still okay. God is still good. Even in the midst of everything that's going on in the world, I found peace and rest in God to be content with where I am in my life. It was hard. And I invite all of you listeners on today to identify the area that's draining you, that's making you depressed, this making your mood shift. Oftentimes, it can be the people that you hang around on a daily basis. It can be the people that you have been rocking with for years. When you're with them, your mood just change. And God may be telling you to let them go and know that it's okay. Allow God in that space with you so that you won't have to continue to go through the cycles of depression. Depression is real. In my past couple of episodes, I have been talking about the stages of grief, unprocessed grief. In this episode, I have unpacked depression and the connection to grief. 9 times out of 10, grief is connected to depression. We want to be in control of everything in our life. When we realize that we are not in control of our life, when we realize that we have to give everything to God and let God handle the outcome, that's where your freedom come from. That's where your peace come from. Because if you understand grief is tied to letting go. God may be asking you to let go of something that you desperately want to hold on to. This can be people, places, things, old identities, cycles that you don't want to let go of. And God may be telling you to give me that so that you can be free. Depression is real. And I want to bring more awareness around this area so that people can recognize and understand how and why depression shows up on a daily basis. Why holding on or suppressing your feelings and emotions can cause you to be depressed because you haven't allowed God in that space, because you haven't taken out the time to slow down and heal from the trauma, the rejection, people pleasing, abandonment, self sabotaging behaviors. Let's learn to identify and heal from our emotional triggers. We can no longer be triggered or held down by the things of our past. It's time to walk in true freedom with God. I have something special coming up soon for my listeners, for my viewers, that I want to really unpack grief with you all. The seasons that we are coming up on, I know a lot of people deals or go through grief. It's not by coincidence that God is having me to talk about the denial, the anger, the frustration, the avoidance, the depression, the acceptance, the stages of grief. It's not by coincidence. So I have something very special coming up for you all soon that I will be launching soon. So stay tuned to Breaking the Silence podcast, where we find freedom, liberation, and healing. That's all for this episode of Understanding Grief, talking about what you don't talk about. Let's heal, let's grow, let's evolve together. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Until next time, y'all have a good day.